agree that the tunnels themselves are quite a comfortable place. Their darkness and cramped conditions can cause an attack of panic or claustrophobia, and the eternal dampness, mold, and general uneasy atmosphere will give us ancient sensations inherited from primitive ancestors. It's scary here alone and not comfortable in the company of friends, and if you also imagine that in this pitch darkness you are lurking in wait for monstrous creatures ready to pounce at any moment. Unfortunately, encounters with tunnel monsters do not only occur in horror films. Underground monster from Kabajatuan. In 1976, in the Kabajatuan area of Toronto, 50-year-old Ernest was not mentioned in the press. An amazing story happened. A man with a flashlight in his hands climbed into an underground tunnel in search of a missing kitten. He managed to advance only 3 meters when some strange creature jumped out at him from the darkness. Ernest describes him as a long, skinny, and toothy monkey, 1 meter tall, covered in gray fur. The creature's large eyes glowed with a bright orange light, greatly frightening Ernest. But the worst thing was that the underground monkey suddenly spoke to the man. "Get out of here," she said twice in a voice that hissed like a snake, and rushed into another tunnel and disappeared into the darkness. Without remembering himself, Ernest climbed up. He was trembling all over from the horror he had experienced. An interview with a man where he spoke about an encounter with an amazing creature was published on condition of anonymity by the Toronto Sun newspaper. Ernest was afraid that otherwise he would simply be laughed at. At the same time, he led the journalists to the place where his short and dangerous journey began. Reporters saw a small passage in the ground leading into a tunnel. Having descended into it, the journalists looked around, walked back and forth a little, but did not see anyone. True, they came across a mutilated cat's corpse half buried in the sand. Perhaps it was the kitten that Ernst was looking for. However, who so brutally killed the unfortunate animal, and even tried to bury it? After this, newspapermen interviewed workers servicing the sewer tunnels. One of them shocked reporters by saying that ordinary people living on the surface of the earth cannot even imagine what the underground world actually is and what underground secrets of the earth are hidden from us. The worker did not know what exactly Ernest saw below, but he categorically stated that if I happen to descend into this underworld, I will never go alone. Since then, there has been no news of the monster from Kabajatuan and it remains a grim mystery in Toronto. However, there is one interesting detail in this story. In the area of present-day Kabajatuan, according to local Indians, there once lived hairy and short people. Humanoid creatures who were called Mervzi, which means small people. Perhaps hiding from the white colonialists, these creatures went into underground corridors, and to this day live in their dark depths. Hairy creature from the dungeon. There is other evidence of monsters from the tunnels. So in 1963, in the U.S. state of Missouri, residents of the outskirts of Centerville from St. Louis began to regularly notice a humanoid hairy creature, which they described as evil and dangerous. Sometimes it appeared in yards, and once it even tried to attack a person. Starting on May 9, the police began to receive up to 50 calls a day about this strange creature. When trying to catch it, the creature invariably ran into the sewer tunnels. Interestingly, eyewitnesses described it differently. For example, a group of children talked about a half-man, half-woman with a head, half hairy and half bald. By the end of the month, the number of reports of the appearance of an unprecedented creature sharply began to decline and soon they stopped completely. Reptilians from the sewer. On March 5, 1981, the Geneva Valley Dispatch of Pennsylvania published an article entitled Rumors of a Green Creature, which reported that near New Kensington, Pennsylvania, a group of teenagers saw an unusual reptilian-like creature 1 meter 20 centimeters high, emerging from a sewer tunnel. The teenagers tried to chase the strange creature, and one was not afraid to even grab it by its thin tail, but the dinosaur-like humanoid screeched so loudly and angrily that the guy immediately let him go and the creature disappeared into the darkness of the tunnel. Judging by the way the teenagers described this creature, it may well be a reptilian or reptilian alien. What if these creatures have a base underground, and through Tanley they go outside? This version is supported by another story that happened in 2008 in the American city of Anaheim, California. A woman was walking her dog and the dog drew the owner's attention to an incomprehensible green creature peeking out of a sewer hatch. Later, as the woman claimed, this creature appeared in her trailer at night and began to creep up to the bed. The terrified woman rushed to her friend's trailer asking for help. Around her own trailer, she saw other green lizards emerging from the sewer hatch. The man ran out holding a golf club. His screams and threats stopped the monsters and forced them to leave. The creatures looked like very large reptiles with sharp large teeth. The story didn't end there, however. The next night, its participants heard eerie screams in the dark, and in the morning they discovered the remains of some animal nearby. After this, the woman and man hastily left the dangerous place. The underground world of reptilians. There is one very interesting fact on the topic of the history of underground reptilians. In the 30s of the last century, engineer-geologist Warren Schaffelt discovered a huge network of mysterious tunnels under Los Angeles. A report on this discovery was published by the Los Angeles Times. Schaffelt believed that the tunnels covered not only the city, but all of California. He was also sure that they were built by some ancient civilization of lizards. Not only America can boast of such tunnels. Several years ago, a letter from a certain Gregor geologist from Austria was published on the website of paranormal researcher Lono Strickler. Gregor wrote that in May 2011 he was exploring a small cave on the eastern shore of Lake Hallstaetharts and suddenly heard some voices in the darkness. Thinking that this was a hallucination, the geologist continued his work, but involuntarily began to listen to the voices. Moving along in the course of his research, he approached the wall of the cave, which for some reason turned out to be smooth and emitted a very strong rotten smell. The soil under the wall was red. Then Gregor heard strange voices again. All this frightened the man so much that he decided to quickly get out and had already run a few meters, but impulsively looked back. The geologist saw a bright yellow light breaking through the darkness. Then some more yellow lights and finally amazing humanoid creatures. There were about 20 of them. Muscular lizard-like creatures that vary somewhat in their height. The creatures had different colored clothes covering their bodies and legs. Therefore, Gregor was able to clearly see only the muzzles and long tails swaying back and forth. However, even through the clothes it was clear that the limbs of these creatures were very massive. Communicating with each other in a language completely unfamiliar to Gregor, the humanoids moved along the passage and disappeared into some hole in the wall. The geologist managed to get out of the cave, but for a long time he was in a state of shock and only later was able to remember in detail everything that happened. An underground monster with glowing eyes. Another unusual case taking place in the mountains of the American state of Washington. Brad Steiger, a well-known archaeologist and researcher of anomalous phenomena, describes in his book Real Monsters, Terrible Creatures, and a Monster from the Dark. At a place called the Cascade Tunnel, an abandoned railway corridor, legends have been told for many years about a monster with yellow glowing eyes. This creature happened to be seen by a certain Dave who went into the tunnel in order to take several photographs. The date of the event was not indicated by the author of the book. Suddenly the man saw glowing yellow eyes ahead. As Dave later said, no known living creature could have such bright eyes. In the twilight, we were able to make out the dark figure of the monster itself, a huge height of more than 2 meters. At the sight of this yellow-eyed giant, Dave rushed out of the tunnel in horror. After some time, having already told people about his meeting with the monster, the man, accompanied by a group of curious people, returned to the same place. Everyone was wondering if the tunnel monster would appear again. This story ended, according to Brad Steiger, very sadly. Not a single person returned from the dangerous expedition and none of the brave souls were seen again. However, not all tunnel monsters are humanoid creatures. For example, in the 70s of the last century, Workers servicing underground communications in Tokyo saw something similar to a giant cobweb that stretched under the ceiling for a considerable distance and, in addition to dry cockroaches, rat corpses, and skeletons dangled in it. In one place, workers discovered a dark hole with a diameter of up to 1/4 meter. Without waiting for someone to come out of the hole, the men hurried to leave. They decided that an ordinary spider lived in the tunnel, but judging by the size of the hole and the web, it can be argued that such large spiders are unknown to science. Creatures from the Moscow sewer. Few people know, but many mysterious creatures also live near Moscow. There is a whole city under the metropolis where they feel at ease. Catacombs, river collectors, underground passages, bunkers, and sometimes inexplicable and eerie things happen in these depths. They know them best from those who spend all their free time in dungeons. Digger Mikhail Savkin has more than once found himself in stories that make your blood run cold. Many times we heard some strange animal echoes that spread throughout the collector. But I don't know what it could be. Don't rush to laugh. Experts are inclined to assume that Moscow's dungeons are inhabited by strange creatures. Savkin actually met real mutants underground. Let's take the Nishchenko River. There, for example, despite the fact that the river is completely dead, fish have recently appeared. They are albinos, they are completely blind, that is, they have no eyes. What does this say? Mutation. The diggers are sure that in their travels underground they were only able to see the tip of the iceberg. There are larger inhabitants in the deeper layers of the earth. There is a whole world of creepy creatures underground, and sometimes they manage to break through and get out. For example, diggers don't want anyone to encounter such a monster in a sewer. Do you believe in underground monsters? Leave your comment, we will be very interested to know about it.